One of the most common problems with networks is security. Security measures come in both software and hardware and will make the biggest difference when it comes to having a safe, reliable internet experience. Proper setup and maintenance are also very important. The first step in securing your network should always be to change passwords. Modems and routers come with default username and passwords, which are very easy to guess. Change the SSID to specify your personal network and use WPA2 security with AES when choosing a password. This encrypts all internet traffic so no one will be able to snoop on your network activity. Setting up a firewall or antivirus is also a good idea. These act as another layer of security, keeping all unauthorized activity out of your network. A firewall helps to stop a threat before it gets to your network, and antivirus software helps to scan your machine and make sure there's no malicious content. It is also very important to keep these programs up to date, as this could mean a previous version has been exploited.
IP addresses are a central part of networking, and each one serves as a specific and unique identifier for devices across a network. You can think of it like a postal address, which is unique to each specific home. An IP address is the same. It allows each unique device to be identified, verified, and connected to the proper services across the internet. There are currently two standards of IP addressing: IPv4, which uses 32 binary bits to create a single unique IP address. IPv4 addresses are expressed in dot decimal notation, for example 192.168.1.2. This is a representation of each octet of the original 32-bit binary number. IPv6 addresses use 128-bit binary addresses, which are expressed in a much longer 16-bit format. When IP addresses were first being assigned to the world's fledgling internet, many networks were private and closed off from the rest. When the internet started growing exponentially, there was a fear that there wouldn't be enough IP addresses using IPv4, which allows just 4.3 billion unique IP addresses in total. The advent of IPv6, which allows for 340 undecillion different IP addresses, completely alleviated this problem for the young and exploding internet. IP addresses themselves can be static or dynamic. Static addresses, which are much rarer, can typically be configured on the device, and if they're improperly configured, they can cause connection issues with other networks. Dynamic IP addresses are the most common, and they're assigned by the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, which runs on many network systems such as routers or dedicated DHCP servers. Dynamic IP addresses are used in a type of leasing system where each dynamically assigned IP is used for a certain amount of time by a device before it is recalled and then reassigned to another one. IP addresses also have different classes, A, B, and C, and each one has a different size of usable host allowed on the network using them. These IP addresses based on their class can also be broken into subnets, smaller partitions of the same network with their own IP addresses in order to allow specific networks to be specialized for certain tasks and outputs in order to increase network efficiency. And these are just some of the basic things that IP addresses allow networks to do.
Networking is a fairly new thing to come into the technology world. With it being a broad and complex field, the 1960s are considered the early period for the world of networking. In 1969, the U.S. Department of Defense develops the ARPANET packet switching network. It was designed to provide high-speed network communication links between supercomputers across the country. This develops into the present-day Internet. Now into the 1970s, where networking starts to become a focus point of the world. The rise of the Ethernet instead of the LAN is what defines the 1970s in the networking field. In 1973, Xerox developed the X-Wire networking system that ran at 1.9 megabytes per second. X-Wire was not available worldwide and was only experimental, but workstations in the White House were connected using the X-Wire system. In 1976, the public key cryptography scheme was developed. It was about secure socket layers, which is now the scheme for ensuring privacy integrity of financial transactions on the Internet. The first personal computer was developed in 1975 and was called the Altair. It ran a Microsoft language named BASIC. In 1977, the Apple II personal computer was developed. LAN networking becomes the main focus of developers once again in the 1980s. Fiber optic cabling was developed to prevent traffic bottlenecking from overloading servers. They were also used to connect separate Ethernet LANs to make larger networks. IBM introduces token ring networking technology in 1982, which increased the speed of the flow of messages between computers. In 1989, CERN, a physics research facility and the largest subnetwork of the Internet in Europe, develops the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, also known as HTTP, which formed the basis of the World Wide Web. The 1990s is the most productive decade for all aspects of networking. Duplex Ethernets were being produced at speeds of 20 megabytes per second. In 1992, the first commercial Ethernet bus was produced running at speeds of 100 megabytes per second. Cable modem is introduced in 1996 to provide residential internet through cable television instead of the popular telephone-based system. Digital cellular communication standards are starting to be brought up, and they are today the standards of wireless connections, or otherwise known as Wi-Fi. Networks have taken many significant jumps since their rise in the 1980s, with a wide range of basic technologies, protocols, and configurations developed. Seeing how fast technology develops in today's age, it makes us wonder, what is going to happen in the years to come? With 5G technology about to hit the market in the near future, the advances it brings is nothing like we've seen before. When talking about 5G speeds, they are incredibly faster than the ones we've seen before. Theoretically, a floor of 1 gigabyte per second and has a ceiling of about 10 gigabytes per second. But in reality, an average of 50 megabytes per second with up to 300 megabytes per second peak. When talking about mobility in 5G, it is incredibly more mobile than what we've seen in 4G LTE. 5G has a very high speed user mobility to as much as hundreds of kilometers per hour will be supported, serving users on all modes of transportation. So you might be asking yourself, what is the difference between 5G versus 4G LTE? Well, first, 5G is incredibly faster. 5G has a much more lower latency, which is video calls and streaming. And 5G also has the capability to differentiate between fixed and mobile devices. It uses cognitive radio techniques to identify each device and offer the most appropriate delivery channel. When it comes to the future of networking, you also have to look into the rise of the cloud. The cloud is growing bigger every day, and technology is allowing us to move almost everything to be operating exclusively in the cloud. The cloud is also converting what used to be specialized hardware or local virtual machines into software running in the cloud. All management functions will reside in the cloud also, including analytics and providing full function, extensible, manage anywhere flexibility, and unprecedented resilience and reliability. With 5G and the cloud becoming powerhouses in the near future, it's hard to believe that years from now something will eventually top both of them. Our technology changes every day and becomes more advanced almost as fast, but with technology changing comes the evolution of networking and how it will make all of our lives easier in the future.